And also with that, this asynchronous process that we can have rolling enrollment. We don't have to do this, 9 people start, this point we had to wait again for another 3-4 months. And now people can start at any point in time. We have a process that we have where people can get the initial assessment they have to get done. They can meet the lead teacher, make sure the program's right for them, get them enrolled on a rolling basis. We just kicked that off actually in January in that process. All right, so that is the lessons we've learned. That's all of CDA. Now we'll move over to our job seeker services. So job seeker services, by that, what I mean, but traditionally what we've meant in past years is that these are the workshops that we provide for individuals in the community. So they could be on resumes, cover letters, social networking like LinkedIn, those sorts of stuff. So we have all the different things. We have some job fairs as well. But what we have instituted in the last 18 months or so is we now have on-demand videos that are available for job seekers, as well as the one-on-one resume, cover letter, and interview assistance sessions that I was talking to you about. Again, the majority of this is funded through the county in other ways, but the CDA students get to utilize a lot of these services on top of other people that we have come to the employment center. Those videos, the nice thing about those are not just recordings of our live workshops. We still do our live workshops 3 times a week. They're interactive. People can come in and ask questions. They work in small groups and things of that nature. But with the videos, we've taken, say, one workshop, broke it down to, say, 4 or 5 sections, small 20-minute sections where people can go say, I just need to know about this. They can watch a video that's made specifically for that versus having to watch this hour-long recording of a video. That has really taken off. People seem to really enjoyed it. I think we've had 201 unique users this fiscal year utilize that. I think it's 486 views total, which is nice. Kind of moving on to here, looking at just the workshops, we've had 107 attendees, but the videos, we've had 201 unique users. With the review sessions, we had 183 review sessions this fiscal year. However, that person only works 20 hours a week, but we still had 183 review sessions. So those last 2 in the green and orange, those right now look like that may be the future for us. Yes.
Are these the workshops that are advertised like DHS emails? And
yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. And they're on our Arlington County website as well for the employment center. The biggest issues that we're having now. But anyway, is that you see, it's only 16 attendees who have met grant eligibility. The problem we're having here is that we're asking people to let us know where they allow the income spectrum. We're not making it mandatory. Because what we don't want to do is for people to not be able to access the services because they won't know what to provide information. The problem is with that, of course, most people choose not to provide that information. So we don't know if they're grant eligible. We'll assume a lot more people are grant eligible, and we're trying to figure out what we're going to do with that. We may have to get to the point where we make it mandatory, but we really don't want to turn people away because that's just not in the spirit of Department of Human Services. And also with that is the 19% gain employment or a better job. That is low, and it sounds low, but the problem is there. We ask these people 3 months after they've had services with us, we're trying to contact them, email, or phone. Most people won't answer the phone. They won't actually respond to the email. So this is just 19% of the people that we know who told us something. So we're trying to figure that out. Same thing with CDA. Once a person gets credentialed, they get a job. They don't need us anymore, so we don't hear from them. So we don't know what's going on with them 3 months down the road. But generally speaking, in the workforce development world, you want to know, do people still have jobs 3 months down the road? So that's just something we're trying to figure out what we can do there. And then lessons learned, I think so far for 2024, on-demand is in demand. People seem to really like those videos. People are really taking to those videos. I think what we're going to do with our workshops moving forward, instead of just having a bunch of individuals who don't know each other register and just show up and hope they show up, we're going to do what we've done so far with the group called READ, Arlington. It's the English language learner classes they're provided by APS. We've gotten with them because you have a lot of students all together, common goals. Some of them actually want to get into the program. We'll take these services, the workshops, to them and talk to that group. That way they can support each other. They all have similar goals. That's a better way we think of utilizing the time versus just meeting with a bunch of individuals individually. Those people now probably go to the one-on-one review sessions where they can get some of the same information, but they can get it just for them, one-on-one, which people seem to really like too, because they don't have to worry about all the other people talking and what they're worried about. It's just about them.
What do you find is the best time of day to?
That's nothing with them. So we have played around with the time. So far, actually, about 11 to 12 seems to be the best time. We've done right at what the typical traditional 12 to 1 lunchtime. People don't seem to like that as much. We've done in the evenings. People don't seem to like that as either. 11 to 12 for some reason has been the time that we've had the most success. I don't know why. I think that is it for those lessons learned. Yep, that's pretty much it. But again, the one-on-one sessions, we're leveraging those. One thing about all of our services, if you go to a workshop, if you go to the one-on-one sessions, you hear about the videos. You hear about the workshops. So people always, they're utilizing more than one service a lot of times to make sure they can help themselves be in a position to get a better job.
Stop working.
It's predominantly entry work rather than advancing work.
As far as what?
Getting people trained to get entered into the industry.
For CDA, yes. For the other general job seekers, I wouldn't say that's the case. We have a lot of people transition out of the military. We'll help them, and we've had people, getting jobs $80, $90, $100 an hour. They just need somebody to kind of help them translate what they did in the military to the civilian sector. We get a lot of people who go through and get PMP training, project management, professional credential certification. So a lot of people who have a decent job come get that, and then they make more money. So I would say probably 40 to 60% of our people would be people kind of getting lower level jobs. Wouldn't necessarily be their first job, but we do have a significant, get 40, 30% people who they are trying to advance through their career. And these are the goals for FY25 here. This is what we're going to have. We had on the grant application, 30 people enrolled in CDA, 25 completing the CDA training program. And that's not necessarily 25 and 30 because we have people, the program is 15 months. So you have people from previous quote unquote cohorts or years that have been included at 25. We want 75% of people to earn a credential. They actually complete the program. By completing the program, I mean they had their portfolio completed. 7% of unemployed clients gain employment during the CDA training program. Right now, we're at 100% for that now. Well, once we've instituted this new way of doing things, everybody's getting a job because I think we're starting early enough. 25, and we're also making sure that people are right fit for the program. Initially starting things off, you're kind of a little more lenient when we let in, then you learn lessons and realize that, okay, if you have these particular challenges, probably not the program for you. So we've done a better job making sure we assess and get the right people into the program. 25% of employed clients get a better job or promotion, and the 3% gain better employment within 90 days of earning the credential. Then on the job seeker side, 100 people complete the job skill workshops or review sessions, 25% gain employment or better employment. And then overall, we want 75% of folks to obtain a living wage, with 75% total maintaining employment at 90 days.
May I ask, on the CDA side, you mentioned that six were going to come off the wait list soon.
Yes, yeah, they're coming off right now. Yeah.
How long is the wait list, and if it's so individualized now, is there a cap that you can handle?
Yes, those are great questions. I think we have another 8 people on the wait list, and that's what we're trying to figure out now. What is the capacity of one lead teacher? Because generally speaking, she can handle about 40 people at the most. 30 or so is probably a good number, but if we had to push it 40, that's probably the most we can have in the program at any one time. The good thing is that from those earlier cohorts, we have, if I remember correctly, I think it's 12 of them, 8 of them are those people about to get credentialed, and another 4 who should be rolling off and can make space for other people. I think right now we have 29 people in the program.
So you
That's
think
without
the additional 8 on the wait list will probably get in soon?
Yes, so that's what we're helping. Yeah, because like we have 29 now. These 6 put at 35. We probably can get another 5 people in there because we know those other people should be rolling off. So we're still trying to figure out how we get that nice flow to make sure she has enough. It'd be nice if we had more money, if we could find money to, get another teacher. Because I mean, it's really taken off, and we haven't marketed this at all this past year because we've had people on the wait list. If we really did that, I think we'd have way more people we can actually serve. Just kidding. I mean, it's funny. We've actually had 2 people from outside the state, like the Northeast who have somehow found out about the program and want to know if they could be a part of the program. That's what we're trying to think like. That's when we first really started talking about, could we start charging to try to help support the program and stuff. But again, we typically have so many local people that it's hard to accept people just for money from other places.
You mentioned an industry certification, a PMP.
Yes.
Those industry certifications can be quite expensive. Do they get financial help to achieve those?
Yeah, so we get different funding, different times a year. We used to have, well, we still technically right now still have the WIOA dollars coming in. That's the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. That's a federal program. We're actually about to contract that out in FY25. But right now, people can get access to funds for that training through that program. There is a priority with that. Veterans are first, so a lot of times when we reach out to Fort Myer, and then it goes by like income. Technically, anybody, everyone who lives in the state of Virginia is eligible for it, but it's a priority list. So people who have high incomes, not of that, you'll be kind of far down, but we can possibly get to you. But yeah, we do have a lot of people, taking military folks who come through and get that sort of certification. IT right now is a big thing as well. People getting IT certifications, trying to go to boot camps and that sort of things. That's another big one for us. We had back to work money that we've been utilizing. We got some from some of the federal money that came out during the pandemic. We still have some of that left that we're using as well. So, yeah. But that's our workforce development programs related to the funding that we're getting from TPHD. And the last slide here, like again, I'm here representing the AEC in the division, but actually if you have questions about the CDA program, I'd reach out to Carolyn Ramirez-Navarro. She's the lead teacher. She couldn't make it tonight. That's why I'm here in her place. Her supervisor, who is the workforce development manager, that position is actually open. That was the change we had. That's why we couldn't come in January. We're filling that position now. Caroline will be reporting to that person, and then that person will be reporting to Jackie Chavez Hernandez, who is over the AEC, but she can be the person you contact for job seeker services. But in the past, I was kind of in this loop far as a supervisor because of what the other person actually did is on a different part of their job. Once this new person gets hired, I won't even be involved in the AEC anymore. So this is probably the last hurrah for me when it comes to the AEC. At least for a while. Unless something changes. All right, any other questions?
Theoretically, all shared care providers should be certified in Arlington. Is that correct?
That I do not know the answer to. I would say no, because you can have assistant teachers who don't need the credential. And not everybody necessarily wants to be a lead teacher. So everybody wouldn't necessarily have to. The one thing I know that the county is looking at, not necessarily the AEC or my division, is the home child care centers and what's needed there. But they have some other folks looking at that. So I'm not quite sure we could credentialing or certification for that.
I have a quick question. Are you all associated, this is an Arlington County program or a state program?
So this is an Arlington County program.
Gotcha. Right
Right now, the funding we're getting, the whole entire program right now is running pretty much from the CPHD funds, the community development funds. We're trying to figure out a way to make it sustainable without these funds and to possibly grow the program. But so it's open to individuals who first live in Arlington with the program, then those who work in Arlington to meet outside, and then if we have space for individuals, if they can pay, whether they pay themselves or their employer pay for them, people who work and live outside.
Because I've been going through a lot of people, so I'm also in my capacity LULAC State Director, League of United Latin American Citizens.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've had a lot of people who have been job seeking. And so one of the things that we've been guiding them to is to the state office. And the state office is horrible that I need to contact the Secretary of Labor for the state of Virginia. And that's the only way that they're able to get any services done. And so, and this is in regards with job seeking and employment and everything like that.
They live in Arlington. They should
But
come
I
to,
mean,
they should
no.
come to the Arlington Employment Center. Yeah, they shouldn't go to I wouldn't go to the state. Like,
The state has been
our,
horrible, yeah.
so we're over at 2100 South Washington, in the Sequoia building, Sequoia 1. That's where you should send folks over there.
Okay, I'll let them know. Thank you.
No problem.
If employers pay, how much is it? Just curious.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to. I think it's 1140, 1160, something like that.
And then the other question I have is we have another employment center here, the SEEC, Shellington Employment Center. So how do you all differ from them? Because they're also receiving funds from the county.
Yes, they are. They're receiving funds from the county. At one point in time, we actually oversaw their contractors.
Oh,
They were
okay.
actually contracted through my division at one point. actually technically right now through the end of this fiscal year, that those funds got put into the new racial equity bill for this that the county put out. So they provide similar services, but from my understanding, they primarily deal with day laborers who are kind of looking to try to still get work as day laborers, not necessarily people trying to go into full-time employment. That's what we focus on primarily, is getting people into full-time sustainable employment. So that'd be the biggest difference. We also have a lot more resources than we have. We do have, Spanish-speaking staff. Yes, staff speak other languages as well. And again, we do have funds for training, which is a big piece of it. A lot of people.
So they would focus on day laborers. So
Seek typically does. Yes.
So if they were doing any type of programming and training, would they send them to you all?
They don't have to. I mean, they could do it themselves. In the past, what we've told them is that, hey, if it's something that you want to do and you have the capacity to do it, you can do it. But definitely send people over to us. We try to get people to come over to us because, to a certain extent, there's a little bit of duplication of effort. But they do have, again, they have their niche that they work on. I think a little more global resources. I think, and we also, I think we have more case management staff. Because besides the stuff I'm telling you all about when it comes to these workshops, we also have an actual case management staff where they work with people long term on getting as well. But that's outside of this grant.
So SEEK was created in like the early 2000s as a response to day laborers congregating down by the Muni over in like 4 Mile Run. And actually, for the longest time, that contract was managed through the Community Development Fund. And when the I don't want to say renovation, but when Jenny Dean Park was reimagined over the last like 5 or so years, that program had to be relocated because they were kind of the office and where the day laborers congregated was in Jenny Dean Park. And so it had, during the renovation, the county kind of reimagined how to support this program, and it moved over to Arlington Mill, which is where they have been operating since, I think, 2019 or so, 2018?
Was right after 2019.
Yeah. But yeah, so I guess now it's being folded, the program funds were folded into the racial equity that we talked about last 2 meetings.
Yes. Okay. Because that's where I've always had a confusion, right? And I tell people go to SEC. I didn't know that there was an Arlington Employment Center. Because then I would send them to Alexandria or Springfield, which is where the 2 employment offices are for the state.
Gotcha.
And so everyone was so confused. So for me, I'm like, Virginia has no resources for people who need employment. Go to Maryland, move. Right?
South Washington.
I'm glad to hear about this because I have a lot of people on my roster.
And this, I mean, if you didn't want to call in, was it 703-228-1300? That's our call center line. To go there, you can ask those people, they can redirect them where they need to go. Because what they can do, when you call that number, they can do an assessment for folks to see, what services they need. Because we found a lot of people who need employment services also need a lot of other services, and DHS provides all sorts of services. So it's better for them just to kind of call there, so you can see everything there.
Exactly. Okay, that's perfect. That's great to know. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you
I
very much.
appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
Okay. So, Caitlin, we're over to the HUD action plan now, huh?
Yes.
Sounds so exciting.
All right. So you were Jennifer.
I have some handouts for everyone, so I'm going to pass them each direction. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
And I'll be contacting you.
Okay, yep, do that.
Thank you.
Couldn't tell if we were ready. Sounds like we're ready now.
So I can kind of kick us off here, and just so everyone's aware, there are 2 items on the agenda here, but these are very interrelated. We're going to kind of cover both of them in one, in one conversation. So it always it's a little bit confusing.
I think they need them down here. They need them down here. They need that second handout.
Oh, okay.
you guys get every, oh, you need.
We have the
okay.
second one
That's
coming.
They need that.
We know.
I'm sorry, I should have handed this both the same direction.
And that- We have everything, right?
Does everyone have? Shh. Okay. And so, and actually, Jennifer, could you put the handouts in the chat maybe, so that the folks who are virtual are able to?
Yeah, I was about to ask.
Sure, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, so they weren't sent out previously.
So one of them was the community development, or the action plan citizen summary, that was sent out, but the, I printed the final scores and votes from the fall, proposal review,
Okay,
just for reference.
Caitlin, it looks like the chat is turned off. I don't know how to turn it on.
Could you email it to Margaret and Tim then?
Sure.
Thank you. The meeting settings are all wonky tonight, I don't know why. Okay, so actually here. So I'm going to just do a quick presentation just because it helps me kind of go through everything. My eyes are so bad I cannot see. Here we go. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're going to be talking about the 2025 action plan and the Community Development Fund budget recommendations. So just to kind of give a quick overview of how everything relates to each other. We did our review of all of our applications for the 2025 fiscal year in the fall. That's when we scored all of the applications and then ranked them and did our applicant interviews. After we received all of your scores and the votes that we collected in December, staff then went back to try to formulate a budget recommendation. The budget recommendation can be found in the citizen summary, this document. It has everything on the second 2 pages. It has both the amount and the source that it's recommended for, and then the expected the outcome for each program. This other document that I gave you is just the final scores and votes, just to reference kind of what they scored and how the ranking turned out. As far as how everything relates to each other, once we put together the budget recommendation, those recommendations are then folded into what we call our action plan. And that is a document that's required by HUD to be able to apply for our CDBG and home funds. So essentially we're telling HUD, this is what we're going to do with this money this year, and here's what the outcomes are going to be. The action plan is usually for HUD just covers CDBG funding, but because our community development fund includes several sources, we kind of wrap it all together and make it a little bit more inclusive of all of the funding sources that make up the community development fund. So with that, I'm going to give you a quick overview of what's in the action plan and kind of how everything shook out in terms of the budget recommendations. So, so first thing to keep in mind is that our funding snapshot right now, everything is an estimate still. The federal government still hasn't passed the budget, so we don't actually know what our HUD allocations are yet. So we're really kind of operating a little bit in the dark here in terms of, you know, we think that we usually anticipate level funding, but who knows? So right now we're anticipating level funding. We're anticipating a slight increase in projected program income for next year. So what we're looking at is around our funding estimate for CDBG is around 1.8 million, a little over $1 million per home. For CSBG around 330,000, 300,000 for AHIF, and then 50,000 for in general fund. So that's what we're taking in. And then as far as the recommendations by goal, and this is very common, the majority of programs that are recommended for fiscal year 2025 fall within Goal 2, promoting healthy and self-sufficient families. Goal 1 is around 134,000. Goal 3, 45,000, and then 5,000 for fostering vibrant and safe communities. So as far as the highlights, as a reminder, we received 34 competitive applications in 2025. There were 2 non-competitive program applications. So that's our Bugada Promotora program and the Arlington Employment Center, which you heard about tonight. There are 7 programs that are on the second year of their 2-year AHIP grant, which they received the first year in 2024. So we essentially consider that an application since it's a 2-year grant. And so with that, 41 programs were recommended for funding. We're also recommending funding for the Neighborhood Small Grants Program, which is around $5,000, and we support sort of community events through this small grants program, and it's kind of a one-off from the Community Development Fund. We also received an additional $100,000 in AHIP for this year, which is great. That was last year was the first year we received an additional $100,000, so we're recommending another 100 that once again this year. And then again, most ongoing programs were recommended for level funding. As far as recommended programs that were recommended for increased funding, and it's all very, it's mostly slight increases, but the Arlington Employment Center, we're recommending about $2,000 increase just to cover increase in program costs and salary increases. We're recommending a slight increase for the Project Discovery program, and then the Our Stomping Ground recommending $5,000 increase for that program. That was the program where they're looking to expand services to another affordable housing complex. So as far as newly recommended programs, we're recommending funding for the Ballston Station Resident Services Program, which is an APA program. We're recommending funding for the 4-H After School Enrichment Program through CARE Incorporated. This is a program that's being recommended in Green Valley for students at Drew Elementary School. We're recommending funding for the Clothesline Arlington Kids Program. And all the first 3 that I just mentioned, those were all recommended funding for AHIP. And then we're recommending funding for the Independence Center, their Building Strong Community Program.
Can I ask, when you say you're recommending funding for the clothesline, on this chart, is that reflected on this chart?
Yeah, the clothesline is under
Request.
Request is 25, and there was no fiscal year 24.
Yeah, because it's a new program. So this doesn't include this does not include the recommended funding. It's
Okay.
and I thought that might be confusing, but I just didn't have time to put it on here.
Okay.
So the
I want to make sure I understand.
recommended funding is all in this document right here. So yeah, but
Is this what they requested on the application that they
yes,
submitted last?
that's the
year?
request. Okay, and so there were 2 programs that were not recommended for funding. So the Arlington Bridge Builders, their Sustaining Healthy Neighborhoods program, and the Center for Youth, Family, and program, the Guiding Personal Success program. So as far as next steps, after our discussion, CDCAC would then consider the action plan recommendations and the budget recommendations. If the committee recommends approval, staff then works with our chair, Laura, to write a letter of support, which would then be submitted to the county board. The county board considers the action plan and budget recommendations at the April county board meeting, and this year that's on April 20th. And then if approved by the board, the program funds will be available starting July 1st. The caveat to all that is that, again, we're still waiting on our HUD allocation. So, depending on what happens with the federal budget. You know, usually after the budget is approved, HUD then has 60 days to get allocations to entitlement communities. We're likely going to have to come back to CDCAC to kind of give you an update as, you know, if we get a huge decrease in funding, we'll have to kind of figure out how to make that work. If we get an increase in funding, we'll have to figure out how to make that work. So basically, you're going to be hearing from us again, is what I'm trying to say. So this is not the last time we're going to talk about this. So with that, I would like to open it up to discussion if anyone has any questions.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just as an example, I'm trying to do the crosswalk here. And so did you say that the CYEP Fathers in Touch didn't get any recommended
No,
funding?
they did.
I don't see it on here. I keep looking and I'm just, must be missing it.
They're in the very bottom, CYEP, Fathers in Touch.
No, not on this chart. You're saying how much they,
2.7.
2.7?
Yep, there it is.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
And it looks like Jennifer has a comment. Jennifer, did you have something to add?
I did. I just wanted to add that on the bright side, we did get our CSBG funding allocation this week, so we do know what that is. So that's about 300,000 of our grants that we usually are not sure about.
That is the bright side.
Was it about what you expected?
I think it was like a $2,000 increase or something. It's weird because CSBG actually they allocate based on this fiscal year, whereas HUD allocates based on next fiscal year. So that's why the CDBG stuff is always way more confusing.
So can I just ask, this is Margaret, sorry, virtually. So I just did notice that, you know, there were on some of them, the budget, oh, sorry, I'm having trouble with technology. I just lost the chart. Oh, dang, hang on, let me find it, let me pull it up again. That there was some of the budget numbers between the request and the amount was fairly significant, a fairly significant difference. So, and it didn't necessarily correlate to a score, for instance. So could you just speak a little bit, and just one of them that popped out at me was, like, for instance, our stomping ground, you know, the request was 50, the award was 20. You know, but they scored fairly high up. Likewise, like Path Forward. So is that because they have other funding coming elsewhere from the county, or just?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think to answer your question, I mean, there's a few different ways to answer your question. I think in a lot of ways, you know, we have this ongoing debate, you know, amongst just whether, you know, it makes more sense to fund, fund as many programs as possible, or fund fewer at larger amounts. And I think where we've kind of landed is continuing to try to support as many programs as possible. And that's kind of that's been our, you know, the way that we've kind of worked through some of the budget discussions in the past. So that's the first thing. I think in terms of, you know, how programs will be able to, you know, support the program even at a lower amount. I mean, most programs, you know, will either, you know, look for additional fundings to make up the gap, or, you know, they'll provide the service at a lower, you know, service level, essentially. Maybe they're funding someone at half-time as opposed to a full-time position. And generally we kind of will work with the organization to kind of come up with what the expected outcomes are. And usually we can make it work. They can make it work in some way. So does that answer your question, Margaret?
Not entirely. I was just curious, just because there are some that receive, particularly that are like long-standing programs that receive all of their request, and others that receive like less than half of their request.
Well, and I think that
So that's just, I was just trying to understand the methodology for how that gets determined, because it's clearly not associated with the score. And it's not associated with whether they're new or old. So I just didn't know kind of what did drive it.
Well, and I think a lot of it also has to do with, there are some organizations that have, particularly ones that have been funded for a certain number of years, they will come in for what they need, and they will be very honest about what their budget request is. And there are others that will just request the max amount because that's just what they do. So I think from that end, but it looks like Jennifer has her hand up and maybe she wanted to offer some additional context there.
I don't know if you want me to jump in, Caitlin. I mean, it's always sort of this putting the puzzle pieces together. It also has to do with the funding source. So if it's and the type of program. So programs that we consider public service hardly ever get more than like 30,000, and many of them come in at 50,000 because we tell them they can do that. So if you look at the sort of public service type things, they're all around in the same range. The ones that tend to get more money are ones that either are AHIF funded, which I think we've explained this, is those are 2-year sort of pilots, and people tend to get more money, but it's a 2-year thing. Or if they're not public service, like the micro enterprise programs, they tend to get more because they can. We have more CDBG that we're able to use. So the most competitive piece is really those public service programs that Caitlin said we've sort of landed on funding more at a lesser amount. And I know we talk about that all the time, and always willing to talk about that. One thing I'll say about that though is we frequently hear from organizations that having funding from the county really helps them attract additional funding. So we've sort of been like, okay, if we give them 20,000, then they're able to get better foundation money or something like that. But that's not to say it's the right approach, and we shouldn't do fewer at 50,000. That's just kind of what we've done in the past.
No, now that works for me, because in looking at where I was, where I was seeing that was in just where you, and now that I look down that, it is right sizing the requests to that sort of $20 to $30 range, $20,000 to $30,000 range. So, yep, that does it.
And Tim, I saw you had your hand up. Were you going to chime in?
I was going to add, I was going to reinforce your point about how this is the longest standing debate that we have. Fewer programs, more money, fewer programs, more money, more programs, less money each. But I would also add that there's a consideration for organizational capacity as well. So some of the organizations that may get less than they ask have greater capacity to raise funds and other funds that they can go for. I think that's also taken into consideration, right, Caitlin, Jennifer?
Yeah.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I know the source is critical. So just, and I don't mean to pick on any particular program, but I have to name programs because that's the only way to do it. So looking at the TANF funding, the highest rated TANF funded thing is Kitchen of Purpose, and they're funded at 60%. The lowest rated in that category was Fathers in Touch, and the highest rated one got highest staff, highest CDC, highest, got 7 dot nights and blew away Fathers in Touch, which got 1 dot night, the lowest staff score, the lowest CDC score, and they're funded at like almost 85%. And if we're going to have what might be considered an arbitrary 30 lift limit, I think we need to say that, because those two numbers don't look right without more explanation. And if the explanation is we have an informal $30,000 limit, I think we should say that and not say 50.
So you're, okay, yeah, I mean, I think that's fair, yeah.
I had a question, and I wanted to point out 2 programs because I'm not confused, but more clarification on how the programming is decided. For example, Care Inc. on this page was rated at, we had rated it 8 votes, and they requested 40,000 funding, and the request that they had was 100 people enrolled at 20,000 CDBG. And Liberty's Promise, we rated it, we had 6 votes, it's just 2 votes, right? But they got a $5,000 increase at $25,000, right? No, 30,000 with only 75 assisted. So what is, you know, what's, I guess, the thing happening there?
I don't understand your question.
Like, for example, Care Inc., we had voted 8 votes for the funding for it. They received 20, how much? 20,000? 20,000, and Liberty's Promise had lower vote range for us. They received $10,000 more funding. So does that incorporate into, like, you know, they have a different program and everything, and also.
So that gets back to the, oh, I'm sorry.
You know, I was just saying, and the deliverable is different because Liberty Promise says 75 versus Care Inc., which has 100, which is serving more. So where is that?
So that gets back to the capacity question. I mean, Care Inc. we have not funded before. Liberty's Promise we have, and we know that they have good organizational capacity.
CARE is a new program, and
Yeah.
typically, if it's a newer program, we sort of see what they can. And I think it gets back to capacity, to making sure that, you know, this is a right fit for them. And I mean, Liberty's Promise is an ongoing program. It's been funded for many years. So.
Yeah, and I will say, I mean, the scores and the votes are a really important input, but they're not the only input. I mean, as we talk, we do look at organizational capacity, we look at longevity, we look at, are they, you know, have they been getting money from, are they getting enough money that we can start stepping them down? It looks at funding source. So like I said, it really is kind of a jigsaw puzzle. The conversations that you all have are actually really important too. So we take, you know, careful notes of that. And sometimes those conversations aren't exactly the way the votes or the scores play out. So we try to like put this all together in a way that we hope reflects what everybody's wanting, given the resources that we have and given the organizational capacity that we know of, because, you know, some of the organizations we have more confidence than others.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah.
And just to talk a lot, I would suggest that if we've been talking for years and years about the distinction between new and old and so forth, might it be time to make a decision instead of talking about it again?
I'm all ears.
Well, I mean, just say again what
So
questions.
essentially, the conversation over the years has been whether we fund, you know, fewer programs at higher amounts, or more programs at lower amounts. And we
Or do we look at startups and push them out into their own realm rather than government funding? I mean, there's a multi-dimensional
Approach.
set of debates.
And I mean, you have to kind of think about it from the organizations we're supporting too. I mean, there's a wide range. I mean, some organizations are, you know, very sophisticated. They've got grant writers. They've got 20, 30 people on staff. They're able to kind of absorb budget cuts very easily. There are a few organizations you report where there's one person and they rely on volunteers. And this funding makes up, you know, 10% of their budget.
Yeah.
And that would be a huge impact to, you know, cut that funding. So we, on the one hand, I think staff has always been very, we try to kind of balance those two things, but yeah, it is hard, and like Jennifer said, it's a jigsaw puzzle every year.
So the other question, I guess, recommendation I have is, would it be easier for both staff and this committee to recommend a new program source budget? For example, new programs apply for this budget rather than applying for the great pie that's in the sky.
And that's kind of how AHIP started.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then and AHIP has like a lot of great money, and I know about the investors and the developers keep putting money into it. Because for me, it's hard to go back to the community and say, why didn't we get this funding? Because you were going up against 100 people. It's like going into the Ivies. You're up against 5,000 people, and they're only going to pick 100. But there's also different qualifications that gets everyone in. So that's what I'm saying. Would it be easier just to say, if you're a new program that hasn't been funded ever before, you're in a pot of 30,000 to such and such, however much money. Older programs that have, you make it a tiered. And older programs who have gotten past the first year of getting funded, we've evaluated them and saying that they're successful. We think that they qualify for more funding, and we put them into the larger pool of saying, now you qualify for however much money that we can give you at the state level. And I'm thinking it might be easier for you guys at staff too, because you're like looking at, okay, I have a different just category of people, and then also I can, and they're categorized at a different level than the greater pot. So for example, AHC and APA established, but versus a new developer coming in, it would be harder for them to infiltrate. DC has the same problem. It's impossible for nonprofits to infiltrate into them because they're already so established. How can we differentiate and say,
We're trying to do the opposite of that. So that's,
yeah.
I see that Tim has his hand up.
No, Jennifer, go ahead, please.
No, I was trying to interrupt so you could have your say.
Well, I was going to say it's an interesting idea because the federal government kind of does that with their small business set-asides, and that's definitely something that we have not thought. Like, for instance, putting the mature group together to compete. I don't know how you do that across various categories and various funding sources, and it would be a lot of work. I mean, it's difficult because each year we don't know what proposals we're going to see. We don't know what needs the community is going to have. We don't know if there's going to be a pandemic. I think we just need to retain as much flexibility as we can to, as a committee, do what we've been appointed to do, which is represent the community and what we know to be its needs. So that's really what we're here to do. Ultimately, we're appointed by our various constituencies, and we do our very best to represent their interests as it relates to the awarding of these programs and this funding. So hard to say. I thought that was an interesting idea. I don't know who that was talking, who the gentleman was, but that's really interesting. But again, I'll come back to my point that that's what we're here to do, is make those decisions and represent the community.
Well, and I think too, I mean, Arlington is a small community and there's a finite number of safety net organizations. So we love to support newer ones, if they have the capacity to do that. But a lot of the more well-established ones will say, okay, we're cutting you off from this program, and then they'll come in for a different program. And that's not a bad thing. That might be it. But then how do you define that? And how do you, I guess I worry that making it so very specific like that and so regimented could, it's hard enough as it is, like I said, to put all the pieces together, but let's talk about that. I mean, I think we have a debrief scheduled usually in May or June before we set up the next NOFA. So that might be a good opportunity to talk about, do we want to sort of shift how we look at things and how we evaluate? And, Caitlin's doing this equity NOFA, and hopefully we'll have some good feedback about, are there good suggestions from that? Are there ways that we might want to look at changing? So that might be good timing for that.
And that would be perfect for the equity. No, well, it would be perfect to look at it from the lens of equity, because there might be a new program like 4-H that is really helping the Green Valley neighborhood, which is very much sometimes forgotten, versus another program that would be coming in more established, helping out maybe not the Green Valley area or the more areas of need. So it
Well, I
also.
think we try to do that. I mean, we talk about that, and that's part of why we recommended funding for CARE. Is I think it's a good program. Hopefully, it's a good program. So whether we make those more formal evaluation criteria or I don't know, lost my thought.
That's what I was going to suggest, that if we can't come up in advance with sort of a set aside, a dollar amount set aside, affirmatively state that we're going to put a thumb on the scale for new programs because we want to encourage innovation. So that perhaps as you're evaluating the capacity or all the other things that you evaluate, it might have a lower bar for them to encourage trying out new things to see if they'll work.
And I think we've kind of shifted towards that, just maybe informally, but maybe stating that more explicitly in our application. Good idea.
So.
I'm in favor of perhaps greater transparency in how they're being evaluated, whether it's the 30,000 cutoff or whether it's thumb on the scale, so that as people are looking at it, they have a better sense of what's really going on.
I agree. Here. That would be good.
It's a dilemma.
Yeah.
I mean, at least it's not a new thing. Again, this is something that we grapple with all the time, and I think we've certainly come a long way. Dots are a big improvement. It just used to be a lot of back and forth, and a lot of discussion, but we can certainly always improve. And if there are ideas for the actual NOFA itself, in terms of the evaluation criteria, and Steve, to your point, things that we write into it, yeah, I mean, that's certainly something that we can do. We've come a long way, but we can always improve.
That would be interesting to try.
So, are there any more, comment, Caitlin? I think these two agenda items are highly related. For both, or do we have the last one to also go through?
I'll just make one comment. There's a dilemma of where to put your priorities. Wherever we do choose to set priorities before we see the proposals, the sooner we communicate what our priorities are will be helpful to the proposers. May not change any results, but it will make it seem more understandable, if not more fair.
Well, we do publish the evaluation criteria in the NOFA. So I think we started doing that several years ago just because we did want to be transparent about what we're looking at.
It's a complex thing, and staff has done a good job in harnessing it, and we'll always commit.
I've always been astounded at how you've managed to provide all this information to us in such an organized way. It really has astounded me.
Caitlin, overall though, have you or the office ever have any complaints from the participants related to any of our issues of how much money they should have gotten, or has that been a problem overall, or it's something that we as a committee are, not complaints, but
questions? Yeah, I mean, sometimes. I think that, we offer debrief sessions for those who are not recommended for funding. Organizations are more and more taking us up on that offer. I think in terms of ones that are recommended for funding, but maybe not necessarily the amount that they had applied for, we get questions, but a lot of times it's, that's through the sort of negotiation of their budget based on what they are awarded. But I think what Jennifer said is absolutely right. I mean, I think our organizations are grateful to receive any amount of county funding because it does help them, go and kind of fundraise for additional funding because it's seen as a secure source of funding.
I was just wondering in terms of our own questions that we have here, little.
Oh.
For no little, you know what I'm saying? The big.
No.
Who came first, the chicken or the egg kind of thing? Do we give more money to the people who've been here longer, or more money to the new startups, or have they been the ones saying, you know, this is unfair? Or
I haven't heard anything like that, to be honest with you.
in order for us to then change what they're saying needs to be changed?
No, I mean, Jennifer, I don't know if you've heard any feedback on that, but I personally have not.
Okay, thank you.
It's hard to complain when you're getting supportive money.
So are we the ones who are complaining?
But if we haven't been transparent about these things, they wouldn't know to be concerned. I mean,
But as Kevin said, they're all being transparent.
well, not about the 30,000 cutoff or about the balance that we haven't decided about how much do we want to encourage innovation versus tried and true programs.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the other thing with the sort of cutoff is, and maybe that this figure hasn't been looked at in a while, but you know, it also depends on our funding amount, because if we get a big increase in funding, then we could support people at a higher rate, you know? Whether that's going to happen, probably not. But we also don't know what our funding is going to be when we put the NOFA out. We're kind of, we're shooting in the dark a little bit there. So, but yeah, I mean, maybe lowering that to maybe 35 to,
We can spread it out more.
yeah. So.
I always say when it comes to government, there's never too much.
Sure.
We have unions, we have labor rules. Let me tell you, that was hundreds of years of hard work. So, what do we say?
Are there any other questions? All right, so Tim, I think we need to take a vote. And what we're voting on is whether you recommend that the county board approve the action plan and the community development fund budget recommendations.
Very practical.
Thanks. Very well.
We're supporting.
So we are
Ken?
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
So
go.
I think we're calling a, if there is a motion to approve our support of the budget.
So
Thank you, Link. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Are there any discussion on this? I feel like we just had a pretty robust discussion, but any other points? We'll call a vote.
So just, I'm sorry to be the devil's advocate here, but so if we did have a problem, I'm saying we do, but we would have discussed it now, and even if the vote went the other way, what would have happened then? Would it be re-reviewed and then resubmitted to the county?
we would have discussed it for the last 6 months.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, if you all had a serious problem with the recommendation, then what we would probably do is go back and try to resolve the issues and bring it back to you for consideration at another date before it goes to the board. But I don't know that not since I've been here has that
It's
happened.
never happened. No.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Christopher, you
Well, I
want?
was going to say, I mean, you all are not, the decision makers are the county board, and this came out in the county manager's proposed budget. So, you know, you as the advisory committee to the board could write I mean, you do write a letter of support, and sometimes in the letters you will say something along the lines of, we wish this had been, you know, if there's an additional organization. A couple of times y'all have been able to actually advocate for more funding for some of these programs. So it's you could certainly write any letter that you wanted.
Okay, that's good to know.
But so that goes, so as the county board is considering adopting the budget, that's where that would go.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I would
seem to
suggest
recall that.
if you're going to write to the county board, write to the county board as an individual, because this collective group have come to a consensus.
If we come to a consensus, then. I mean, we still have to be a committee at the end of the day.
Well, and I feel like there's a difference between committee versus commission, right? We've seen it in Chicago. I mean, I don't want to go into history, but you've seen it in Chicago with, what's it called? A commissioner versus the committee voting and approval. We see it in Congress every day. So we could write as a commissioner, but the committee's final vote is that of the committee. I'm just laying out some rules and guidances, government, civic engagement. But I don't
So,
have any-
Chris, it sounds like you have some concerns with these recommendations. What are your
No,
concerns?
I was just, that was just a, what is it called? Not a facilitator question, but procedural question.
Got it.
Procedural.
So I know
question.
you haven't been on the committee for a whole year, but again, like in spring, I think is really the opportunity for you all to weigh in on the NOFA. If you want to look at changing the evaluation criteria, it's a great opportunity to do all of that. So since you've been through this, like half of the process so far, that might be good for like, so now you can come in with fresh eyes and be like, okay, I think we need to look at this a little differently or evaluate that a little differently.
Yeah.
So we will be glad to
Yeah.
have that discussion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Always
and-
looking
and
for
just-
tweaks.
Yeah, and just to be clear, the letter can be as detailed or as pro forma as we would like. So if there are any specific concerns, for instance, one year, I think we did write about a specific program, if I'm remembering correctly, and we advocated for the program be funded, because I think what happened was it was a program and it was affecting a specific area. That was back when we had neighborhood strategy areas, but the program itself was not adequate. It didn't fit any of the funding buckets. It just wouldn't have been a program that CDCAC funding could have approved. So we advocated for it in our letter, and I believe that the county board funded it. So, the letter matters, I guess is where I would go with this. I think it was a program in Green Valley, if I remember correctly. So anyway, for what it's worth, Chris, I think that you can, if you have ideas, you can share them with Laura and I or the staff or anybody for that matter.
Thank you.
Yeah, any other questions, comments? Unheard, so I think we'll call the vote. All those in favor of supporting the recommendations that have been presented, say aye.
Aye.
Any noes or abstentions? Well, with none heard, Caitlin, I think that the motion approves.
Thank you, Tim. All right.
So I
Thank
think it takes us to the end of the agenda where I think we can do some reports, right?
Yeah. So our chair is not here, and I know Tim is kind of filling in for Laura, but I don't think she shared any reports with you. Is that correct, Tim?
Well, no, I guess the only question is, did she meet? I can't recall. Did she meet with our board liaison or anybody else since
Yes.
our last meeting?
I don't think since our last meeting.
Okay. So there's no new information about that.
I don't think so, but I can follow up with her.
Okay.
And ask her to send an email if there is.
Well, I certainly don't have anything then. So over to you for staff.
Okay. So I just have two updates. The one is there was some conversation at the last couple meetings about stipends for committee members. I don't have much to report other than we are looking into it, and it's been acknowledged by our citizen. What is it called? What do they call themselves? The CAPE team. They're like our communications and community.
The county manager's office is looking into it. Yeah.
So they're looking into it, and hopefully we'll have something to report to everyone at a later date. I also wanted to just remind everyone about the community development tour, which is next month. The date is April 3rd. And I think we have a really great lineup scheduled. And Jennifer, would you mind giving a quick overview of the tour schedule?
Sure. So I believe we'll be meeting at Courthouse at 6. So a little bit earlier than our regular meeting, and then it should be 2 hours. Those of you who've been on this before know we can run late, but we're going to try hard not to. We're going to visit EduFuturo, which we've been funding for a number of years and haven't visited yet. So I'm excited about that. And then we'll be visiting Fathers in Touch. And then we will finished the tour at Terwilliger Place, which is APA's sort of newest property, couple, 2-3 years old, in North Arlington near Virginia Square, to kind of get a tour of that property. And we're hoping, this is kind of exciting, that we're going to get fed by one of the restaurants that has gotten funding through one of our micro enterprise programs. So full circle, so we get to eat. It's the 50th anniversary of the Community Development Block Grant Program, so we're excited about that. We have some HUD folks coming. They're really wanting to like celebrate the CDBG stuff, so be sure to welcome them too.
Awesome.
It's a bus,
Great,
There's a bus. Yep.
so we'll
And
be
terrific.
meeting outside.
We'll be meeting here at 6 o'clock at the flagpoles. So
Yeah,
And-
we'll send out more details.
we will send more details.
Well, the
And we
other
remember last year we
thing
moved
is-
on to a grown-up bus. We stopped doing the school bus.
Right.
The important thing is their food.
Yeah, so what Jennifer was saying is that we're hoping to get one of the restaurants or the food trucks that's supported by one of the micro enterprise programs that receive funding through Community Development Fund to cater the event. We're still asking around to see what would be most appropriate.
Just an advertisement. About 5 or 6 years ago, on the bus, we stopped and we had a place with the micro food there.
Mm-hmm.
The person providing the food came to America and Arlington as an immigrant.
Mm-hmm.
Green card, but with nothing. Arlington County subsidized housing, gave him training. Fast forward 7 years later, he and his wife bought his own house.
Ooh, that's great.
I mean, he was able to move up just the way we pray everybody does. But we will probably see 1 or 2 of those people in different places that we stay in. And just admire and thank them.
Yeah, it's always a great meeting. Always a fantastic time to go see these programs. And I think you guys are putting together a great lineup. And I'm really happy that we're going to go see Fathers in Touch, because I know that is one of the programs that there's always a lot of questions. And I will tell you, like, just a personal anecdote. I believe it was Just Neighbors that we went to go see out at Bailey's Crossroads one year, and that was a life-altering experience, and meeting people, hearing their stories, and learning just how impactful the grant can be to an organization like that, and how it can change lives. So this is always a great session, and I think you guys put together a great lineup. So really looking forward to it. Thank you.
Great.
Well, we're going to have fun.
Yeah. Are there any member reports?
Right, just a question. Last time you mentioned that you're now one of the reviewers
Yeah.
on the equity, but at that time, I think you said you didn't know how that was going to work, whether you were going to be on all of them or you're going to be on a subset of them. Have you learned any more about
Yes,
your
it's a
role
sub-
in it?
It's a subset.
It's a subset.
Yeah, so I think there are maybe 4 or 5 groups, and each group is reviewing 8 proposals. So, yeah, I'm learning some ideas that we could potentially incorporate into our process. So I'll be happy to share more once that process is wrapped up.
Was there a decision, because I wasn't here for a few times, but I know we were talking about the equity NOFA and whether we would be brought into the deciding factor, or if the county was going to take it entirely over and say we're deciding?
So, I mean, at this point, I haven't heard anything about it being sort of merged with this group. I mean, I think that we have to keep in mind is that, as we were talking about before, the funding sources kind of would complicate that, because they are so different, and there are a lot of federal requirements that wouldn't be applicable to the race equity funds, those are county general funds. But I haven't heard anything about the 2 programs being merged. I think that there's definitely some lessons learned that maybe each process can learn of each other, and we can certainly try to incorporate some of those into our process and maybe vice versa. But as far as this committee being involved in the review of those, I have not heard anything about that. All right.
Great. Any other closing comments before we move to adjourn?
Keep it up.
None heard. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you, Ling. Great meeting, everybody. Caitlin and Jennifer, awesome job as always.
Thank you.
See you, everybody, next
Thanks,
month.
everyone. See you next month.
Thank you.
Good night,